Okay. Not gonna lie, man. So I jumped the gun. That's like I thought that was Big Mom. That was not Big Mom. I was Miss Buckin. Okay, so we got Stussy in this bitch. Okay, but side note, when I finished this chapter, my immediate thought was this kind of confirms it for me. I do think that Loki's joining the crew. Like it just seems like it because Loki saw his father get recruited by Rocks and turned it down. Luffy just made that offer. I don't think that Loki turns that down, especially just given, the connection with Rocks in terms of Loki and Rocks. Like, I really feel like that's going to be something where he's going to do it. Like, and there's nothing else left for him here on this island. Like, he's going to get his redemption. That's coming. This just one of those things like it's time. Like it's time for him to get out and leave. So I do like that Oda did this with the flashback. Now, backing things up though, it should like really be worth noting, like the way that Rox was carrying himself. I'm becoming a fan. Like we knew like Rox was strong because like we know like Garp and Roger teamed up at one point, but like this was interesting to see the dynamic and to see the guy's got no chill, but at the same time, the guy he behaves like Dragon in some ways. In that, like he's looking at the world government and he's like, man, the hell with that. Like, I'm doing whatever I gotta do, guerrilla warfare tactics or whatever. And so it does kind of make me wonder, like, what's the next thing that's gonna happen with Dragon? Because we know Dragon's made his move and he's been on the move. We know that Shanks has been on the move, but it is one of those things like there's a war coming. Oda very infamously is building towards a war. And he's talented enough where he can pull it off. Cause like you had the mini war at Marine and then you had a civil war basically in Wano. Now it looks like he's building towards this grand war, and this grand war be the one that completely shapes everything. Like it's like a little cliche, but at the same time, it works. And I don't say cliche in a tongue-in-cheek way. I don't say cliche in a bad way. I mean, in this, like, Shonen have used wars a lot. But in this one, I see like the seeds being planted here. And how we're getting there is what matters. And so far, the road towards that inevitable powder keg going off is working. So we open up and you have Loki explaining like, hey, you're an Elbaph. And he's like, my name is Loki. My dad is gone right now. So, you can't necessarily get in touch with him right now. And that's what Rox is like, that's where you're wrong. And he pulls out his sword and he just damages Loki. And what I like there is that Rox does it and Loki ends up learning a very valuable lesson. Number one, you can't be too trusting. And number two, the other thing that you really got to watch out for is don't think you understand everybody around you. And the reason why I say that is he thought that his dad wasn't going to come for him. And yet his dad cares. But like that's the benefit of because we see everything that led up to what happened with his mother. And so it's one of those things like Loki didn't understand the value that he presented to his own father. And that's the heartbreaking part because everything that's happened, he didn't truly understand. I think that as he got older, it began to hit him. And I think this is one of those turning points. And I like how the next thing we end up getting is a shot to the reverie. And basically, Rox was out there doing all types of crazy stuff. And the reason why I say crazy stuff is he was able to take down one of the admirals. And I'm guessing because of the proximity that he got to Emu, that whatever admiral he got to was probably filling the role that Akainu has, where there's like, he knows who Emu is. And so I'm guessing that's what that was and why that was so much of a big deal. But the other thing, he got into that chamber that Emu's at. And because of that, Rox was trying to use the Kings as a bargaining chip. But Emu is like, dude, I don't care. I don't care that you got them. And when Rox says, like, man, I'm getting out of here, but I will be back. That's interesting to me because that means that Sabo wasn't the only person that was able to get that close to Emu. Rocks did as well. And so I really want to see where Oda's going to take this. I really want to see it because you can't see Emu's face, but the fact that Oda just did the split panel when Rocks is like, I will be back right here. And you see the other side of Emu, and there's a drawn up look of the eyes. It does make me wonder, was this truly the moment where Emu began to feel some fear? Because so far, like, Emu has been a character we've seen, somebody that's pretty cool. He's gotten angry. We've seen the anger. But this feels like that might have been a moment of fear. And for me, what this moment really showed is that Emu's not untouchable. You know, because, like, based on how I've read him so far, I've kind of read him as this unstoppable being. Now, we know that, like, that's not true. And we knew it before this. But that was one of those things, like, I was willing to just roll with the punches and roll with the flow of the story, because Emu feels like that's going to be, like, the final boss of the story. So I'm just kind of buying into hype a little bit. But, like, this was a moment where I do feel like Oda was kind of letting you know, like, the same way that, you know, Gabon told them, like, hey, the Holy Knights are not immortal. They can't be killed. Kind of feel like this was Oda letting us know, like, yeah, Emu can be taken down as well. It'll probably have to be somebody from the D clan, but there's somebody can take him down. So I did like seeing that. And I like how, as that's going on, you see Harald and he's running through, and it's because the Celestials go from, oh, you know, he's bigger than a giant, you know, we need to have him for a slave, to no, we need to kill him. And they run into each other, and the clash that they have reminded me of, on a bigger scale, obviously, it reminded me of Whitebeard and Shanks when they had their moment. And the way that, like, everything here is just so much on a larger scale, where everything within 5 kilometers is just completely destroyed. And how in that moment, there's a sign of mutual respect for each other's power. And you gotta admit, like, for somebody like Rocks to clash with Harald, and for Harald to be equaled out by a tiny man, that's the interesting part. Because when we open up, he had no respect for small people. And yet now it's a small person that was standing there as his equal. Like, I love just the intricate layers to the storytelling we're getting here. Now, this ultimately leads to them having to make an alliance where they're working together. And it's because they need to escape. And then that's when we find out that, like, the Admiral died. And we see as Rocks is going through and he's using the Davy Back Fights, which I know, like, that, like, brings, like, PTSD and the One Piece fandom because of the Foxy stuff. I enjoyed the Foxy stuff, to be honest with you, but I know that, like, that kind of brings PTSD based on what people have told me. But, like, I like how Rocks was taking this opportunity to assemble a crew. And just looking at it, like, he got some pretty impressive people. And I did like that we saw Shiki, the Golden Lion. And I forgot who told me to check out One Piece Strong World, but I'm so glad that I watched that. Because, you know, Shiki, like, I know, like, the Devil Fruit itself, and it does bring in some power scaling issues, but I don't mind it. You know, I just kind of chalk it up to, like, he was probably, like, this is a good way. I might be jumping the gun a bit. Like, it'll be just my luck that he'll show some super insane power level feats. But I kind of looked at, like, Shiki, now that I know that he's on the Rocks crew and etc. He might mess around and be like the let me think of a super weak strike. He might be the Usopp of the crew, right? He might be the Usopp of the crew. Like, you know, stronger than most, but he ain't necessarily, like, built like the top 3. And so, like, when you look at the Rocks Pirates, like, we know that Big Mom was there. We know that Whitebeard was there. We know that, I believe Kaido was there as well. Like, he just ain't built like them. He ain't built like Rocks. And that's fine. You know, that's my headcanon to justify how Luffy was able to take him down. But I said to say, like, it was kind of nice to just see the different people that Rocks was able to bring together. And that's, like, another thing. Like, it's reminding me of Luffy. Because what these people have in common is that each of them could have been leaders of their own crew. And so I did like that, you know, we just saw that, like Luffy, all these strong-willed people are following behind Rocks. And so basically what ends up happening is Rocks and Harald, they get into it. You know, he's trying to recruit him into the crew. And he's like, you know, at the end of the day, you're a giant. You got that fighting blood in you. You say that things are changing. But dude, like, are you really that naive? You do not think that you're going to change the world government. You don't think that you're going to change their perception. Like, fam, it's not going to happen like that. You know, he's basically saying, like, there's a time for revolution coming. And, you know, Rocks ain't wrong. It looks like Dragon might be carrying that flag forward. Rocks might have been a little bit too soon. Or he might have been on time and just didn't have the right firepower. Because it looks like King Harald did not go with him. And because of that, that might have been the one thing that was stopping the tide from shifting. And yet at the same time, the Rocks pirates were able to make a huge impression. They made a huge impression on Loki, obviously. But I said to say this. If there's a war coming, and we just got told that the giants are going to swing the tide of battle, it does make me wonder, is Loki joining the crew? I really feel like that's where this is going. I really feel like that's where this is going. Loki is going to end up joining the crew. It just makes the most sense there. And like the fact that like Rocks was doing all this crazy shit that you could expect somebody like Dragon to do. It just like from attacking the world government ships to destroying the gates of justice. Like it just feels like that's the type of guerrilla warfare tactics that Dragon would have carried out. And so I do like a lot of what we're seeing there. Like in terms of the crew, from having Miss Buck in there to having Don Marlon, having Whitebeard there. Like I like how all this came together. I kind of hope that like we get to see more of what the Rocks pirates are doing out there. That's the next thing I hope that we have. But this feels like this is a Harald and a Loki-centric flashback. So I do hope that this is explored further. You know, Oda could just kind of take the scope off and show us more. But I really hope that at some point we get more information. That is, I am genuinely curious now. I really want to see more. And because this is Blackbeard's father, like, it just makes Blackbeard, having been one of the warlords, hit harder now. And it also raises the possibility. Like, I'm focused on Emu as a final boss. Like, what if it ends up being Blackbeard? Like, I'm so curious how Oda is gonna do this. Like, I know this is like either the final saga or I'm coming up on the final saga. I don't remember what you guys told me. I know I am rushing to try to get caught up, but I am curious to see how Oda's gonna string this together. Like, I am so curious to see how he's gonna do this. So my chapter question to you guys is, what were your overall thoughts and impressions on the Rocks Pirates? And where do you rank Shiki in terms of his power level? Let me know how you guys feel. And, you know, do the ranking based on Strong World, and then just do the ranking based on what you know from the manga. Let me know down in the comment section below. No spoilers, please, because I will be reading the comment section on this one. I try to avoid the comments in order to not get spoiled. But, so always, guys, if you like anything I had to say, don't forget to comment, rate, subscribe, and share. Thank you so much for watching all the way to the end. Have an awesome day, guys.